Hey Brian, viewers here, and welcome to Stochastic Agency. Today I want to go on a little bit of a dive beyond the rules and take a look at something other than dice rolls and delve into a little bit of a psychological aspect of playing role-playing games. In a recent video by Better with Bacon, There Is No Such Thing as In-Character Play, he inspired me to follow up on a few concepts that he mentions, and he let me know that he was just going to kind of let what I was talking about with him lie where it lay. Now, just to clarify before any keyboard cowpokes get irate, in his video he discusses how 100% in-character play is impossible. It should come as no surprise that I agree with him. But in-character play has a very strong appeal to many and is often derided or disparaged by just as many. This is where we get the role-playing is not acting and you're just some wannabe theater kid kind of comments. Now, I'm not going to go into how these two statements or ones just like them have become old chestnuts of discussions in the role-playing community. So if playing in character is something you're wanting to explore and you're feeling a little challenged by it, let's talk. This is another one of those things that happens every time you sit down to play a role-playing game, but you might not have ever had words for it, or it's just something you don't think about. We're going to explore the relationship between you, the player, and the character you're playing. This peek behind the curtain will use two concepts, which have been around for quite a while: roll distance and player stance. If you take a moment to understand how these concepts work, you might look at your character sheet or your GM and potentially the kinds of decisions that you make in a different way. So let's start with roll distance. Imagine a psychological space, a gap between you and your character. Now, this gap isn't fixed. It can shrink and grow throughout the course of a game or a campaign or even during a one-shot. When that distance is really big, you're kind of playing detached from the character. A short step in the direction of playing in character is one of those things you should have learned in a writing class had you taken one, and that's point of view. You could be thinking like a tactician, a strategist. You might say, you see Clovis grip their axe, let out a roar, and charge the goblin at 15 feet away. Now, this is kind of a second-person point of view poking its head in here. And it can feel a little weird when players always refer to themselves and their characters via their name. You see Clovis do this. You hear Clovis say that. And you may be focused as this player on stats and a so-called win, maybe in the short term. Now, this is a moderate roll distance. It's protective and keeps the game at arm's length. It leans more into second-person speech tags and forms of framing. Now, when you use speech tags like he, she, it, they, and those framing methods, you're moving more towards third person, an even higher distance between you and the character. But when the distance shrinks and becomes tiny, you're not just moving a token on the field anymore, or a miniature across a battle mat. You're playing more in character. Speaking in the first person is the direction you're going to want to move in. I grip my axe and let out a roar as I challenge the goblins 15 feet away. It's very simple, right? In a way, you're trying to feel what they feel, think what they think, and talk about what they do. It's a short step because it's just a way of verbalizing what you say and the actions that you're doing as character, in character, as the player. Now, roll distance and point of view is the initial opening of the gate of the feeling for immersion. And that's something a lot of people strive for, right? Now, the opposite can happen when you speak in third person, though. But to kind of get there, let's take another example. And this is from the sociologist who came up with these ideas, Erving Goffman, a Canadian-born American sociologist, social psychologist, and writer. He watched kids on a merry-go-round, and he kind of observed the following. A 5-year-old will ride with pure abandon and joy. Their sense of self as merry-go-rounder and round rider, and the roll has almost zero distance. But a 12-year-old is too cool for that. They just can't enjoy it earnestly, not in front of their friends anyway. So they ride with mock bravado, they do tricks, or they act bored. They're fulfilling the role of merry-go-round rider, but they're also signaling that I'm more than this role. This is kind of silly. They're creating distance to protect image and identity. We do similar things in role-playing with humor all the time if we're playing like a horror game. So in a sense, if you lean more one direction towards high roll distance, you're playing a little bit more detached, you're thinking a little bit more strategic. If you play low roll distance, you're moving a little more towards in-character, attempting that immersive experience. In the context of role-playing games, stance is the sense of a player's interaction with the game, and their characters largely attributed to Ron Edwards and the discussions in the early 2000s that took place on The Forge and developed from RPG theory there. If you're interested in really looking at these kind of things, just Google RPG stance theory. So what are they? First up, the one many people think of as role-playing is the actor stance. But a word of caution here. If you fixate on the word actor and all that it meta communicates, you're likely suffering from functional fixedness. The actor stance is not about putting on a performance as an actor, or at least it doesn't have to be, and it probably shouldn't be. Chances are you're not one, and I recommend that you let your fixation go. Here, the player makes decisions based only on what the character knows, what they feel, what the character believes. You may actively filter out your knowledge when doing all of this. If your character is terrified of spiders, you, the player, may act terrified, even if you, the player, know that the spider is just a harmless illusion of your imagination. However, you may be trying to expose the character's internal reality in some way or fashion, or just elucidating a failed saving throw. Often when you choose actions, that character does what anybody who is frightened would do. The next is the author stance. And this is where you step back and you think more like a writer. You decide for your character because, as the player, you believe it makes the so-called story more interesting, more dramatic. You may have your hero make a foolish mistake or fail a crucial test of faith on purpose, not because they would, but because the resulting conflict and the drama would be an incredible way to create an interesting situation. It's also kind of where you prioritize the quality of a so-called story over your character's success or advancement. Story takes precedent. You know what? For the drama, I think my paladin, who has sworn an oath of honesty here, is going to tell a lie. Later on, I want to see how they are going to grapple with that guilt. Now, a subset of the stance we just talked about is the super tactical pawn stance. Your character is a game piece. Your decisions are often more about optimizing stats, position, and resources efficiently. Character personality, motivation take a backseat to the rules' mechanical advantages, so to speak. And finally, there's one that really does kind of break the mold, and that's the director stance. This is when you, the player, get to introduce or alter elements in the game world itself, things your character couldn't possibly control. Think co-creation. This is the power to act on an imagined situation, not just within it. When the players ask a GM, hey, is there a chandelier that I can shoot down? They are delving into co-creation and kind of a director stance. In many modern games, this is kind of a core mechanic where you can spend a resource like fate to literally declare, there just happens to be an old friend of mine in the crowd who can cause a distraction for me. But you never really just use one. The player might shift between all of these stances. You might be an actor during a heartfelt negotiation, switch to pawn stance, big conflict and complex fight, and then use author stance to make a choice that drives the so-called plot forward. The key is knowing that they exist. They are approaches to play, so you can choose to use them intentionally if you want to. So why does breaking any of this down matter? Well, for decades, game designers have been wrestling with these ideas. The rules of a game aren't just a neutral physics engine to many. They are a machine designed to encourage a specific kind of play. The styles of play that can contribute to and evolve into a whole culture of play. The rallying cry of the generation for indie designers at one point was system matters. Another old chestnut debate that I'm just really not going to touch on this one. When we look at a game like Dogs in the Vineyard, its conflict system isn't about pass-fail. It's a high-stakes poker game where you get to bid dice. You can always escalate, raise the bid, from talking to shouting to fighting to shooting. But every escalation raises the stakes and has a permanent consequence. The system itself relentlessly forces you to make an authorial choice. Is winning this argument worth my character getting hurt? Am I, the player, willing to introduce violence into the imagined situation? On the other hand, if we look at a game like Fiasco, a game with no GM at all, the players have all the power. The rules give you a choice each turn: either establish the scene, directing where it is and what's happening, but let the other players decide what the outcome is. Is it good? Is it bad for you? Or you let others establish the scene, putting your character in a tough spot, but then you get to decide if the outcome is good or bad. Now, they're both excellent examples of a shared director and actor stance, and they can be valuable. In a game powered by the apocalypse, it creates more of a fluid conversation between multiple stances. The GM asks you, what would you do? Prompting an actor's response, right? But when you roll a partial success, the rules often give you a choice of complications. You pick the lock, but either you leave evidence behind or it takes way too long. So which one is it? That's the choice an author makes. The system is designed to allow you to seamlessly transition between character embodiment and then jockey for narrative control in a seamless one-roll package. The great news is you don't need a specific game to be thinking in this way. You can bring this awareness to any table to chase that proverbial dragon of an immersive experience if the low roll distance feeling is something you can achieve, aka becoming immersed in character. For the group as a whole, start with something in session 0. See those kinds of videos. If I'm playing with a new group of people myself, this is kind of non-negotiable. It's a conversation we're going to have. The group needs to set expectations. What tone are we aiming for? Are there any topics that are off limits? The single most powerful technique, and it's simple, is to switch to first person. I open the door from Clovis opens the door, and even further from my character opens the door. It's a simple linguistic trick that reinforces the connection between you and the playing the role of your character. Also, don't just create a character, create a person. Give them goals, give them actions. Not just I want to be rich, but will do anything to buy back the ancestral home. Give them flaws, develop bonds with other PCs, with NPCs, with communities, with other player characters. It's all valuable stuff. These are the player character driven concepts that will pull you towards an in-character perspective. Don't just say you see the tavern. We've had this conversation before. See the other videos. You smell the spilled ale, wood smoke. You hear the roar of a dozen conversations and you feel the warmth of the fire. There we go. Lots of senses in that statement. If you use backstories, they cannot be off limits for other players and GMs to interact with. That information should come up. Some might want to go as far as atmospheric tools. Dim the lights for a dungeon crawl, use a curated playlist for music to set the mood, hand out physical prompts like a sealed letter, all kinds of things. These tangible elements help ground the player's imagination and minimize real-world distractions. So there you have it. A gap, some stances, some ideas if you're willing to give them a try or so inclined. With this understanding and a little intentional practice, a group can stop accidentally experiencing enjoyment and start being intentional about what they're doing and when they play. Now, all these ideas you're going to have to find and strike the right balance between character-driven choices and so-called story-focused drama. You might be able to build the kind of collaborative experience you want to have. So what's your default stance? Are you an actor, a cunning author, or a master director? Let me know in the comments below. As I always say, like, dislike, or subscribe at your own discretion. And remember, functional fixation is self-vexation.